preparing the live stream. It takes a minute to set this up. I wish I could set this up sooner. Okay, it's now streaming on YouTube. Okay, we're still in the green room. 1 second. Quiet on the set. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. I'm Dear Myrtle, your friend in genealogy. Welcome to Mondays with Myrt, where we talk about anything and everything that's come across our Genia desk in the last week or so. I sort of semi-changed my branding at the top of the hour here, just to let you know we've got 4 things coming forward this week, not just Mondays with Myrt. So let me bring on all of the panelists. And last time I asked them to say where they lived or where they were doing research. This time, as I call on each one of you, would you please tell our audience what genealogy management software you use, your number one best database at the moment? Okay, Cousin Russ, you go first.
Meanwhile, I'm doing 4 other things.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, he's a family tree maker user. And he also has a blog, ftmuser.blogspot.com. Thanks, Russ. Pat Kuhn?
Hi.
Yeah, everybody unmute so we can zip through this quickly. No worries. Hi, Pat. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here. I use Mac Family Tree right now as my main.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our gal in Wales, you're next.
My main family history software is Family Historian.
Okay, good. Our gal in, on the sun coast of Florida.
And me?
Yep, you're the only one there on the sun coast, at least in this small panelist group.
I'm Roots Magic 7 all the way.
Okay. Our gal in Norway.
I'm a family tree maker user. I've been that since 1999.
Been around a while, yep. You were a mere toddler when you started.
Thanks.
Okay. Our guy in Germany.
I'm using Roots Magic 7 at the moment.
Okay, at the moment. Good. I'm going to turn up my volume because you're all coming in beautifully, but maybe a little soft for old Myrt. Okay, our guy in California.
I guess that's me. Yeah. I'm Roots Magic 7 still. 15 years now.
Yeah. Sounds good. My cousin Dave.
Well, I think that Liv and I bought our family tree maker about the same time, and that's what I've. But I dabble in Roots Magic because of collaborators, but just dabble.
Okay, Robin, what's your principal genealogy management program?
Family Tree Maker.
Okie dokie, artichoke, as my beloved stepmother used to say. So panelists have each made a decision to have their genealogy on their computer, not just at a website like Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage, Genie, WikiTree, whatever it is. Find wonderful folks at all of those websites, Family Search too. Okay, now I'm going to ask each of the panelists, give me information on 2 backup strategies if you have them, so we're not losing what's on your computer. Who wants to go first? Russ does.
I got the other stuff done.
Okay, great.
I back up to an external drive and do a test restore from the external drive, at least on a monthly basis, the test restore. And my hard drive and all external drives are backed up to the cloud.
Which is unusual. People think of just their, well, wait, I want to canvass everybody before I prejudice responses. such a pill, aren't I, Cousin Dave? Okay, I'm going to start with Robin there. Boy, it's interesting. I'm looking at YouTube over here, and I'm looking at you all here in Zoom, and you're in a different layout over on the YouTube side. But we're adaptable, no problem. Okay, Robin, what do you use to secure your database?
Like Russ, I do a backup to a hard drive using the Windows backup. And I also use iDrive, which is a cloud storage for my back.
Perfect. Okay, Frank.
Yeah, I'm using normal external hard drives for my personal backup, and then I encrypt it and put it up on Dropbox too.
Okay, sounds good. Hillary, what do you do?
I save all my things that I've scanned and that sort of type of thing up on, I back it up onto a sort of a cloud storage. And I've also got things saved onto external hard drives as well.
Okay, 2 strategies there. Okay, Leave.
Yes, I use 2. I use Dropbox and I use Backblaze.
Okay, sounds familiar to me. Cousin Dave?
I Backblaze, and they when I don't have my external attached overnight, they remind me we can't find this other drive, so they push me into that. And I do occasionally, and I should be more better at this. I do back up to the external hard drive occasionally. I like Russ's. I'd like to have him talk a little bit more about creating a test.
Okay.
Reboot, whatever he called it.
All right. Yeah, restoring. Backup is one thing. Restoring is backup is all compressed or whatever, not readily viewable. Restore is opening it up onto your computer so you can see it all again. Randy.
I have iDrive every night at midnight because I'm not up then. And I also copy Roots Magic, especially the file, to Dropbox and Google Drive, a couple times a week.
Yeah, and you're pretty busy every week in your database, so that's good. Okay, Diana.
I use Dropbox every time I open a file. It saves it to Dropbox, so it's always up to date. Plus, I have an external drive that I back up to.
Perfect. Move your mic up just a little so we can hear you better, because every word we have to say is important and we love it. Okay. Robin.
You did?
Robin. Oh, I did, Robin. Okay. Who have I not asked?
Me.
Oh. Pat, how is it going?
Okay. I use Backblaze, and I just got an external drive. I have to start figuring out how to do that. In case you didn't see a difference here, I'm now on a MacBook Air.
Oh, okay.
My main computer bit the dust.
Oh my gosh, you had to
buy.
I
knew it was coming. So.
All right, it's good we ended up with you. Let's you and I have a little talk. Okay. I think I can spotlight us for everybody. And the thing is, if your computer just bit the dust, how was it for retrieving your genealogy data? Because that's the whole point of having a backup. You don't want to lose all that you typed and scanned and attached.
Yeah. I pretty much moved everything to my iCloud before I shut it off entirely. And so that gave me that. When I got onto this, I just had to go to iCloud, and all my documents and my photos and everything were there.
Wow, that's perfect then. That's what we like to hear. So I think I've previously canvassed the panelists to say, have you ever had a hard drive fail? What's your hard drive or your motherboard?
No, it was still going, but it was so slow, and I just was losing patience with it, and I just decided it was time to
It was about time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, the day after I got onto this computer, this laptop, Facebook came up with, from 9 years ago, I had just gotten that computer.
You got your money's worth, honey.
So it was 9 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
You
it
were
was
about
well
due.
past it.
You were
Well
due.
past.
Okay. I couldn't have ended on a more perfect note with that question, with your for the first time on your new computer. I'm glad that you were able to preserve your data. Now let me ask you, because I kind of know what you do, some of what you do, and a lot of it has to do with crafting, which involves a lot of downloads of Genevieve's beautiful papers, digitals.
And the papers, yeah.
Yeah. Is that what's, are you like me? I have an external hard drive that also gets backed up because of Backblaze. That's nothing but all those digitals.
That's what I just got one that's 4 terabytes.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to get a couple more. That way, if I could have like one for my pictures, one and documents, and one for just for my crafting, because it's really just not Genevieve's stuff.
Yeah, I know.
I
see where you are all over.
all the other downloads, digital downloads, because everybody, that was what really got me going, because all of a sudden I was trying to buy some digis off of Etsy, and it wouldn't download them. No room
at the end.
Yeah.
So what Pat and I do, we do paper crafting of journals, and Pat made me the most beautiful journal. It was a sewing theme, because she knows I like quilting too. And so you can either go to the craft store and buy the same paper everybody else uses, or you can, which you don't want to do when we're in COVID isolation. The thing that we do is go to Etsy, or, well, there's a couple in Australia, I can think of one, where you have to go to their website to order something and download it. And then these print out on our Echo Print printers, which Dave noticed was very noisy. He wanted to know if it was a 9-pin printer, it sounded like.
I actually just got a new printer too.
Oh, wow. Well, anyway.
I got the wide format, like Genevieve's been
talking
about.
I'm jealous.
I know.
All right. So that was logical to put all those digital images there. All my genealogy's on my main computer, but it doesn't matter whether it's on an external drive or an internal drive. The fact that it's backed up to the cloud by Backblaze, and Backblaze can handle all these multiple, hard drives we may have. I still have, if I wanted to crack the case on my computer, I could put a hard drive in there, a couple more. But the point of it is, have a genealogy program, back it up to the cloud. You can have an external drive if you want, but if I had an electrical fire in this corner of our house, this would be total meltdown. I don't want that to ever happen to any of us. And not only the damage to the home, but to your data. Okay, so Cousin Russ, have we got comments from the community to bring in, perhaps? You did a while back, and maybe they're out of sequence. I don't know. What do you think? Can't hear him.
I'm not saying anything, trying to get back there.
Okay,
Janine
thank
says
you.
She's using Family Tree Maker, but would love recommendation on best database software recommendation using Excel as the foundation. My answer is the software that works best for you.
Well, the first part of it, till she said Excel, I totally agree with you, Russ. And I do use Excel for genealogy, but only to organize things before I arrive at the conclusion of when is that birth date. Really, Excel is not adequate for a pedigree, descendancy, everything else. You need a genealogy, a mainstream genealogy management program. And Cousin Russ is right.
The key thing about Excel that people don't necessarily understand is dates. Excel does not handle dates before 1900 correctly.
It's
Unless
also
there's a
not
workaround.
relational. It's also not relational.
Yeah, it's one line going across, period. Well, you can link, but you're not going to do that for all. I have what am I working on? 127 surnames and 16,000 people. I think I have more than that by now, surnames. Okay, let's see what else the community's saying. Is that it?
No, let me get out. Let's see what
there's
family tree
Maria.
maker, family tree maker, legacy, FTM and legacy, external drive, backblaze, legacy,
Cronus.
A Cronus. I don't know what that is.
So
unless it's an external drive.
Yeah. I'm going to try to pull that up on the other screen. Go ahead, Russ.
G drive, external drive, iDrive. I also have Ancestry as my database backup on top of my personal drive and cloud.
Cronus is backup software. I just pulled it up.
Okay. All right.
Oh.
6 external drives. Do you have instructions on your blog about recovering monthly from your backup? I probably did a couple years ago. It's there, but I do a test recover from backup once a month on one or more files. And I've said this before, but it's worth saying again. I found out that one of my external drives failed because I tried to do a restore and would not restore. Let's see what else is here. Family Tree Builder, Louis Kessler, and MyHeritage, they work together nicely.
Yeah.
The Master Genealogist.
I just love Bob Velke's brain. Wow. I know, but I wish that he could have continued to keep it up. Okay.
That's it.
Okay. All right. So somebody mentioned a Cronus, and could we see who that? Could you mention again who that is? Somebody pipe in there, just so that you can see what a Cronus branding looks like. I haven't heard of this service before, but apparently they have 500,000 backed up businesses, 400 awards.
Luna.
Oh, what? Can't hear you, dear.
Luana, L-A-U-N-A.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. All right. And she's one of our regular attendees, so I tend to trust our regular attendees, and plus I've interacted with her a little. Linda Jordan said she's used them also. Yeah. Cindy Bray says she learned about Airtable at Roots Tech, relational database, not in place of her family tree maker. Got it. Okay. I want to talk to you about about Family Search. They had a conference, right? And it's all virtual. And there was a lot of advertising leading up to and during the conference. But I wish that they would every day between now and the end of the year spotlight one of their, how many, it's over 1,000, maybe it was 1,300 videos, recordings of class sessions. I honestly think they're missing an opportunity to spread that education even more among I'm trying not to say further or farther. Which is it? Anyway, to get the word out, initially, they spent tons of time and energy doing that. And they have this wealth of information available for a year following the initial debut of rootstech.org.
Randy, did you just put something comments about Family Search?
Yeah, they're putting several videos on YouTube every week, 3 or 4, twice a week, something like that, from the classes, including the keynotes. So,
but they're not advertising it. I'm not seeing it all over the place like we did
leaving it up
before.
to us. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's also their job, not necessarily only our job. Mr. Myrt, now that your computer's on again, I'm at download 74 megabytes per second. So I'm afraid you're going to have to go in airplane mode because it's just too slow. Thank you. Appreciate that, hon. There's something on his computer, Russ. I can get 300 down when he's not online. And wondering why this is so slow. All right. So we're not done with you, Pat. Tell us what happened about your genealogy connection. First of all, I love the flowers. You've got your crocus here and your tulips are ready to pop open any day.
That's screen sharing.
Yeah, okay. But tell us about your amazing genealogy share. Let me pull it up.
Hey, my grandson asked me yesterday, we're having dinner, and he says that a friend of his has this tree in his house. He was going there after we had dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that there's Simses in the tree.
Oh, yeah.
So he said to me, I'll take a picture of it and send it to you when I get there. So he sent me this. So I started looking at it, and a couple of years ago, a woman had contacted me who was in the Sims family, and that's how I found out about a group. Well, I knew they began in Donaldson. They were miners when they came from England, and so they were like in that area. And she had a link to the Williamson. So I started looking, and when I started seeing the names, so I looked up, and I found the connection, and it was this family, this part of the family. And so I called my son, and I told him, I sent a message to my grandson, and I said, well, your friend is a cousin with the Simses, and this is their father's, my first husband's line. And I said, the connection, it's my grandson's fourth great grandfather, Alfred Sims.
So that's where the most recent common ancestor is.
That's their common ancestor.
You know, it's a small world when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty unusual. Well, first of all, you must have done something right if your son noticed a family tree on somebody's wall.
Yeah,
on his front wall.
Yeah, my grandkids, they do. They ask me questions every once in a while, but because a few years ago it was another grandson that had asked me about the Reedies, the connection. Yeah. And I had already, connected that and all, because his teacher in school was talking about local genealogy and stuff like that. And so he asked me about it. He says, isn't there somebody called Reedy or something? I said, yeah. He was a famous gunsmith. He invented a particular rifle. So in the town of Gratz, which is a couple towns over from where I live, that's where he lived. And there's one of those memorial signs where his house was. And I found his grave the one day in the cemetery that I was in Graz with one of my sons, and we had to part. That was really weird that day because I went with him. He had an appointment. He had hurt his shoulder at work, and we pulled into this like a family center, and this doctor was in there, and I said to him, "You see that church across the street? That could be where the Reedies went to church." So when he came back out of his doctor's appointment, we went across the street, and sure enough, we found them.
Oh, we get by with a little help from our friends, don't we?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you for the Pat Kuhn part of the show today. You've contributed a lot. Let's see, who shall we speak with next? We have the Randy Seaver part of the show. Let's do that next. Cousin Russ will share the link with those who are watching via Zoom. And by the way, you can register for Dear Myrtle's webinars. And well, actually, Myrt's journal is not in webinar format using Zoom. It's in Zoom meeting format. And I specifically am keeping it that way because there's a difference between what your genealogy society or you might elect to do. The free account is in Zoom meeting format and can be upgraded to extend beyond 40 minutes. The other three items, the Myrt journal is usually pre-recorded. Mini Myrt's the meeting. Mondays with Myrt and Wacky Wednesday are dedicated webinars with dedicated panelists and dedicated attendees. Okay, so this is, let me pull this over. Randy, talk to me about skinning a cat.
Let me just mention that Amanuensis Mundi, I've been doing this over 10 years now. I have 580 posts of transcribing a document. And most of them are probate, some are land records, and some have been Revolutionary War pension files, and a couple of obituaries. But so in this process, I'm back now to the 1600s, basically. And if you want to show your screen, I'd appreciate it.
I'm pulling it up slowly.
Okay, good. And so the Elizabethan handwriting comes into play back in this time frame. And the image that I got from American Ancestors is also on Ancestry.
Oops, I Pinterested it by mistake. Sorry.
Well, you can save it if it's your ancestry, yeah.
Okay, I'll pull it back up.
Yeah. So it's a little torn on the edges. It's a little water damaged in the middle, and it's hard to read. And so I thought, well, shoot, I don't know if I want to transcribe this one just because it's, so bad and hard to read, and I may make a mistake and whatever. But then I had a little brain fade overnight and thought, the court clerk transcribes this almost contemporaneously. This was written July 24th, 1697. John Grout dies the next day, and his son takes it to the probate court in early August, and on August 16th, the court approves it. And the court clerk then transcribes it into the probate court record book in Massachusetts. This is in Middlesex County, Massachusetts. And again, that is in another hand, but it's easier to read and it's a lot sharper. And so I skinned the cat. I was able to get every word. Some are spelled differently.
Yes.
They don't use the white space that the other one did. The court clerk cramps the last word in each line. But this one's easier to read. And so I transcribed that one just for that reason. But I did in the blog post cite both of them. So you have to deal with things like that.
Now, citing both, let's talk about that. That's excellent. Why did you cite both?
Well, you know, I showed both,
Mm-hmm.
and I transcribed the second one.
Mm-hmm.
So it provides a way for other people to find it. It also shows that I've done some due diligence in trying to find what those missing words are, or what the torn edges are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was written probably 2 or 3 weeks after the will was written, and obviously the guy could read it and it wasn't damaged, you know, at the time. But now, 300 years later, it's damaged, and but it's still available. You know, there are so many things that are hiding on Family Search and on Ancestry and the other sites that most of us don't look at, you know, and we don't even think about.
Absolutely. One of the things that I wanted to bring out because of this post in particular is this second thing, which is the entry in the probate court's book, clearly a book, looks old. And so we're thinking it's the first recorded will, the first recording of it.
Yeah, this is
and
volume 9 in the Middlesex County probate records, and there's thousands of volumes.
Right. And what can happen is that you have clerks that are human. Imagine that. They're not robots. This is the original, and you're right, it is harder to read. I totally get that. And so you're letting your readers know that you've looked at both versions, but the one you chose to then type up was the one that was easier to read. But
And had all the content that was in the original, as far as I can tell. You know, there's only a couple lines missing there and a couple of edges on the right that are damaged, but that's, you know, it's what you do.
thanks for hanging in there. I just got bumped offline. I'd love it. We have every variable happening. Okay, well, thank you for sharing this. 500 such posts. That's incredible.
All of my ancestors, pretty much.
You pretty much covered them.
Yeah, well, they all apply to,
Yeah,
all of my ancestors.
excellent. All right.
Frank
Well-
makes a nice note there.
Okay, go for it, Frank.
Yeah, let Frank do it.
Yeah, I noted to Randy that these transcriptions makes it possible to be machine readable. That means that you can search for it, or that persons with a disability can have the transcription translated into audio or even braille. So it's much easier for everyone to read the machine readable forms instead of the original ones.
So that transcription is all the more important, is what you're telling me, because of accessibility.
Yeah, Randy, Patricia asked, what software does everybody use for transcribing? What do you use?
I just use an image window below a blogging window on my PC, full width, so I can magnify the image to see the words. The lines are usually, you know, all the way across the bottom of my screen, and then I have a window that I'm typing into in Blogger. But I know there is software.
So Blogger is your blog
most of it,
platform.
Usually, yeah.
And then do you copy and paste that into notes for the death of that individual or for the will or whatever?
I have a probate or a will event.
And
for the person in my tree. And I copied that in. And when I write a biography, I include the whole thing.
Perfect.
I have one more question because you bring it up and I know what I do. Do you put a link to your blog post for that person?
I haven't been, no.
I have unfortunately, you can't see the link on the Ancestry member tree, but within Family Tree Maker, I have a link to the blog post to any of my ancestors. So it's just something that I do to take that work and make it available for anybody who has access to my database. Unfortunately, Ancestry does not accept those links.
Interesting. We do have one attendee raising their hand. If you could tell the panelists what you'd like to speak about, Mr. Mott or Miss Mott. Dave, you want to jump in here with a comment?
Oh, I just want to mention that I went over to see my daughter and son-in-law and grandkids about a month ago, and there was a 51-inch monitor leaning against the wall in his kitchen. What are you going to do with that, Nick? He said, I got to get rid of it somehow. I said, well, get rid of it in the back seat of my car. And I brought it home, and here it is in front of me. And it's absolutely a lifesaver reading those kinds of documents, because as I mentioned in the chat, it makes it much easier to see the words. It doesn't help me transcribe the actual word if it's something really complicated. So you still have to go up and down to find similar words and similar letters. But boy, this 51-inch monitor, and that's all I use it for. That's it, is just to put big old documents up there so I can read them and see them easier in my advanced age.
And what is your what software do you use?
Oh, I'm sorry, Transcript.
Thank you.
Yep. Here's the link.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, we're always on top of things here. He's with Myrt. Okay. So this is an example of it. Let me zoom in on this one picture. Okay, boy, we're just having the greatest time. This is 3 weeks of this, Russ. Anyway, you can resize these two elements and zoom in on the upper part. And that's what you're talking about, is that ability to zoom in. Now, I've got it here showing up so you can see some of the controls. Let me bring this over.
The other thing that happens when you do it is, as you type, the image many times will scroll up and up with you as you type down.
You're absolutely right. That's very convenient. Yeah.
Very, very convenient. So that's something to look into. I just love it when brilliant people do things to create. It's free for personal use. If you want the pro version, it's $19. I'd just pay the $19. It's worth $1,900 actually, if you were to ask. Well, thank you for this. And congratulations on over 500 things for Mondays. Yeah. Okay. So innocently enough, Judy Russell wrote a blog post, didn't she, Cousin Russ?
She
We're
did.
switching gears. And it's called The Joys of Ambiguity. And it has to do with the fact that AL was an abbreviation for a place that you know about, Cousin Dave, Alabama. But
yes, indeed.
There was a problem. What was the problem here, Russ? You're in the middle of this conversation, but get us oriented. I'll pull up her actual post.
I wasn't involved with the beginning of the conversation. I read Judy's Facebook post, but I didn't get involved until Yvette made a comment in the discussion that wasn't true.
Yeah. So the original issue with that Judy noticed was that the artificial intelligence over at Ancestry, go away, was translating AL to be a town in Iran, which wasn't possible, wasn't even probable, wasn't likely, was absolutely false. And I think it's always important for us to make a distinction between software that helps us organize our thinking and software, the use of artificial intelligence, or even fill-in-the-blank genealogy management programs that lead us to believe something else. For instance, I may have a very second or third-hand bit of information about a wedding date, but till I actually have the marriage entry, not the marriage license, but the marriage return or entry in the marriage book at that local place of jurisdiction. It could be church record, could be government record. The fact that I put my very unreliable thing as a source of the information for the marriage date makes it look in my genealogy software that my work's done. It's never done. Need to get more to the source. Like Randy had the source of the will, very difficult to read. He used the transcription that was word for word made by the clerk of the court. And what if it was a couple more layers removed? So artificial intelligence in this case was the issue, not fill in the blank, because the person had clearly put AL for Alabama, which was acceptable in those days. Remember when we had a 10 megabyte hard drive and thought we'd never fill it up? And we were trained to abbreviate wherever possible because we had only so much space on the hard drive. Honey, we got plenty of space now. All right, so here's what happened next. People were going bonkers over it, and Yvette Hotink said this, and this is not true, but this is what she was assuming. And this is why Cousin Russ got in on it. She thought that she was using, that the family tree maker itself was automatically resolving place names. And she has a blog post and couldn't understand why all these people in her database were born in a tiny village. And then she discovered that something had removed Holland and put the tiny village here as the place of the event. And Russ begged to differ. So what happened next, Russ?
Well, I explained what Family Tree Maker has a feature to resolve place names, but it is not, I pointed out that it was not automatic resolve place names. The user has to manually resolve place names. And I just, not reading the whole long list of things that had gone before, I was reading the fact that we have historical place names and we have current place names, which is what the resolve place name features for. Mm-hmm. So I just, I record historical place names, and that came up in the chat while we're talking about Massachusetts Colony. I will enter the place name that the record is indicating historically, and then I will put the current place name because I want to use the map feature within Family Tree Maker. Now, I do one other thing, and that is I mark the current place name as private in Family Tree Maker so that it does not get into my Ancestry member tree. If you're looking at my Ancestry member tree, I want you to see the historical place name. And yes, I have blogged about that. And I put the person that I had a dialogue with further down the conversation, that next person, I just mentioned that I have a blog post on the dual entry of place names.
Yeah, that is critical because you and I and our spouses still want to go to Chester, Pennsylvania to see where our ancestors were, our 1679 Quakers. No, that's the ones in the Patuxent River, my non-Quakers. Definitely not Quakers. But we like to go to the places and walk the walk and talk the talk. And so we need to know the right place on the face of the earth now. But that does mess up things. This is something that Hotink had noticed, that NL for Netherlands sometimes through artificial intelligence means becomes Newfoundland and Labrador in Canada. So I just want us to be aware of these things. And the fact that you do double entry is brilliant, Russ.
The other thing that when I am talking or teaching, I tell people to spell things out. What was Alabama before we went to 2 letters in the state? When I grew up, it was usually 3 letters would be the state. Then it became 2. So I believe that we should spell stuff out, including things like county. I will put the term county on every place name that I know, because there's sometimes where county may not be, or I'll give you an example. Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a city. Philadelphia is a county. And I have ancestors buried in Philadelphia. Is that the county or is that the city? And Pat is shaking her head because she does as well. So I add, and luckily Family Tree Maker allows me to add the word county. I do the same thing for township. If I know, if that's what the record says, I will spell out the word township to distinguish from the same. Another example, in the state of New Jersey, there are 4 that I know of Washington townships. Where is it? I don't live in one, I live next to one, and the town of Washington is down the road 15 minutes. So spell stuff out.
Yep. I totally understand this. We've got to make it clear what we're talking about.
Michael made a comment that says, I use county for every location of my database, helped clear up much confusion.
Okay. Somebody wants to know, do we use USA or spell it out?
The answer, it depends. And Ancestry is very not consistent. I see United States, I see United States of America, I say USA from records. So Family Tree Makers resolve place names is how we got on this discussion. It requires USA, and that's fine with me because I have led up smallest to largest. I've led up to USA, and Karen Kay says the city or county of Baltimore is 2 different places, and Baltimore is not in Baltimore County. Baltimore is was a border county, so it is an independent city that is surrounded by Baltimore County. Did I get that right, Karen Kay?
Kind of tricky. There's a couple of places like that in Virginia that are independent cities.
Any border city that was involved with the Civil War may have exactly that.
Okay. While I'm setting up for this next component, I've got to switch this. Would you let's ask Leave to come to the screen, turn on her mic, and I need to share screen, and we're going to pull up what you're talking about. And let me mute my own video. So I'm trying to work on showing you something on my cell phone. Okay, we got her link, Cousin Russ? Leaves? Thank you. All right, so this has something to do with people who left Norway. And I have to tell newbies, this is how I remembered. E, exit, emigrate. I, come in, immigrate. So when they left Norway, they did something. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. That's something we learned in school, the difference between immigration and immigration.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the blog post I've written today is about Amerikabrev, which means letters from America. And I have a collection of letters, and a lot of them are from the United States. And I had a little look at this one. And this is a guy who wanted to marry my great aunt.
Mhm.
So he left for America in 1905, and he hoped that she would someday come after him. But sadly, that did not happen.
Didn't work out.
No.
But beautiful handwriting.
Yeah. So he's written in pencil on his journey from Norway to Hull in Great Britain. So it's really not the America, but it's the beginning of the trip. And he goes from the city of Kristiansund, and then the boat has started from Trondheim and gone to Kristiansund, and it stops in some of the larger cities on the western coast of Norway before it goes over to Hull.
And Hull is in England, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so one thing that's interesting here is how they went. They went by one boat to Great Britain, by train to Liverpool, and then by another boat to New York, Baltimore, no, Boston.
Boston?
Yeah, that's one of the main ports for the Norwegian immigrants.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that.
And then they went either by train or they could go by boat through the channels and to the big lakes.
Yes, there's the Erie Canal and things like that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get the world up here on the map. Okay. So Hull is here with the red map pin. Okay. And where did they depart from?
Liverpool.
Oh, which is across the way. Yeah, Liverpool's over here. All right, but let's also look. Let's go up to Norway. I always think of Norway as being directly north of Scotland, but I'm incorrect on that. So Trondheim is, let's see if I can.
Yeah, you had it. The big.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing that we know that place because we were there. All right,
yes.
And this is a beautiful area, and this is a very protected area. But you're saying they stopped at various places along the way, which makes sense.
Yeah, and you can see Bergen down here, and Stavanger's even further south.
Mm-hmm. And when you recognize the topography, let me do the satellite view, it's going to be easier for them to get there by boat. I mean, look at the main roads.
Yeah.
Not many.
So he could have chosen to go from Trondheim or Kristiansund. That was equally far.
Yeah. Yeah, he could have gone over. Isn't there a famous trek across from Trondheim into Sweden historically? I read about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Swedes, some of the Swedes, they would go to Trondheim to emigrate to the United States.
Ah, okay.
So if you're looking for your Swedish ancestor and how they came to the United States, have a look at and see if they came through Trondheim.
Well, it's like some of our Germanic ancestors came through Le Havre, France, rather than going up to Rotterdam. It's just, I don't know. We've got to think more broadly. I don't think they went by way of Iran, however. Yeah, otherwise it was going to be very expensive. I mean, these are high mountains here. But to go across there is a lot less expensive theoretically than to deal with going through all of this. This is a tight little squeeze through here to come out and around to get over to Hull or whatever to the New World. This is one of the things that as a ridiculous American traveler, I had no idea that when you are, for instance, in Lithuania or Latvia, and you try to look over to Sweden, you can't see it. This water is big. This is a huge place. But when we look at it like this, we don't tend to think of it that way. But look at it in comparison, folks. Those of us that are here and are so US-centric, think of Lake Superior here and compare it to this area. Definitely, it's big, the Baltic Sea. I went 13 different stops through, 13 days through various stops in the Baltic. So yeah, that makes sense to take a shorter route, even if you do have to endure mountainous. Do these mountains east of Trondheim have snow on them all year? Do you know?
No, I don't think, not many of them, no.
Okay, so that may also inform our process. If the ship arrived in the late summer, your person could have come from Sweden through Trondheim in that way. But you don't know about the Trondheim part because you're picking them up in Liverpool and going Liverpool over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in these letters, you're able to figure out, well, you can tell by that postmark, what his migration pattern was.
Yeah, so he tells a lot about it. And I even got a postcard which he writes to my great uncle, which is the brother of Anne. And he writes another one to his to Anne and Ole's father. So and that postcard is from Liverpool. So
you're now seeing that, yeah.
I got a lot of information about his trip.
It's excellent. All right, you're lucky. You're making me sick. You get all these cool documents. I love it. All right. Now, you said something that was intriguing to me. And that was, you mentioned, I'm getting ready to show what's happening in the background. You mentioned great aunt. Is that great aunt your great grandmother or great grandfather's sibling? Or is the person you called your great aunt a sibling to your grandparent?
It's a sibling to my grandfather, grandparent. Mm-hmm. And the term in Norwegian is grandtante, meaning, aunt.
So let's have that discussion. We haven't had it for a long time, Cousin Russ. And I actually had it on the list. So the fact that you use that term, it's kind of providential because I could segue into it here. Let's stop screen sharing. And I think a lot of it has to do with family tradition. Do you call them great aunt or grand aunt if they are your grandparents' siblings? I'm a purist and think, now that I've been studying genealogy, that that's confusing because I think of greats as being one more generation older. But I'd like to ask the panelists what they tend to use. Grand aunt or great aunt? Yes, Diana.
I had never heard of grand aunt or grand uncle. They're all great aunts and great uncles, no matter which generation they are. And that's just the way I was raised, and they still are.
Exactly. Yes.
I agree.
Okay. What else? Anybody else thought about it?
Oh, I've tossed and turned one way or the other, and and like Diana said, saying grand aunt just doesn't click with me. It's some perhaps it's correct in some way, but culturally, it's a great aunt, not a grand aunt.
Yeah, the cultural tradition is what we need to be aware of. Because technically, to be accurate about using a term grand for the generation that I'm in to my grandchildren, I'm the grandma. And so it should not be Great Aunt Sharon, my sister, or Great Uncle Mike, although he will tell you he's quite a great guy. He's really a grand something or other if what we're thinking of is this generation. It's a tradition. Yes, Diana, say that for the recording.
Just don't make the assumption based on what they're called of what generation they are. So if I tell you my great aunt Mary did such and such, don't assume that she's a sibling of my great grandparent. In that case, she's the sibling of my grandparent.
Well, and then we have something where my dad's cousin, he always called her Aunt Catherine. And Uncle Herb was her husband. And they married very late in life and so didn't have any children. And it's very hard for me to explain to my grandchildren, okay, this is like English, the language is different than what it technically means. You know, we have exceptions to the rules, all I before E except after C, or as in pronouncing A in neighbor or way. You remember all those things we had to memorize? Yeah. We really need to see where they are in the chart. So I thought because she was old, that she really was one of my dad's father's siblings. But she is the daughter of one of the siblings and is in fact a cousin to my father. She is a pretty great gal. All right, let's see what people are saying in the community. Get ready for that. But anybody else on the board, what do they do in England? What do they call things like that in England?
I've always known people as great aunts. I mean, we even sometimes call people aunts that aren't actually aunts, and and cousins. You probably call somebody a cousin even if they were a second or third cousin, because it's just easier.
Like Kentucky Colonels. That's a nice appellation, but it doesn't mean that the person actually served in the military. It's a term of endearment in the South to call somebody colonel, somebody or other. Yeah. Cousin Rich, you got the feedback from the community. Let me pin you. Spotlight to everyone.
I put in the link to Diane Haddad's article in Family Tree magazine some time ago about this topic. Marion says, I think people who hear grand aunt understand that she's the same generation as grandmother. Maria says, me too. Diana, great grand uncle. We've always been great to me. The aunt is how I always know my grandparents' siblings. Diana voiced that one. Judy says the use of a grand aunt is strange. It makes more sense to be grand with your grandparents' generation, great for your great grandparents' generation. Randy, I'll get you voice yours in a minute.
June.
June says they are also called aunt, even not if they're not related. This is a courteous honor. I'm called Auntie June by my in-laws family, yet I'm not related to them at all. And how many of us have aunts who aren't related to us? Sherry gives us a link to a YouTube video on this topic. Lee has mentioned that. Joanne says, my great grand aunt Rebecca was my great aunt grandmother's sister who married my great grandfather.
Oh, that gets complicated. Yeah.
She is my great aunt and my step great grandmother. On the other hand, when I was growing up, they were aunt and uncle, not great. No great was used. Dave?
I just want to, this is more humorous than anything else. When I'm speaking here in Massachusetts, I don't have any aunts. I have aunts.
Aunts.
But with it's Randy shaking his head. But with groups like ours, it's definitely aunt. I have to be careful.
I hear you. Well, good.
Kathleen says my grandmother's sisters were great aunts and her aunts were great aunts. I had both growing up. Molly says, then you have all those friends of our grandparents who are called aunt and they're no kin at all. Robin, you want to voice your comment? You're muted.
Okay, so let me show the article in question. This in this lined format makes sense for the definition, but I agree. I grew up with you call them great, even though they are at the grand level. So that's a tricky thing, a very tricky thing.
So when I was growing up, we didn't call, when we were talking to them, we didn't call them great aunt such and such. We just called them aunt such and such. If we were referring to them outside of the family, then we would say, oh, great aunt Bess or something. But
exactly.
Because in the family you knew.
Yes.
And outside of that you didn't. Yes. Did you have the tradition, this isn't so hard to swallow, that you always called the friends of your parents Mr. or Mrs.? You didn't call them by their first name?
Yes.
Okay.
That was correct, yeah.
Yeah, that was a sign of respect. The other interesting thing is I've started noticing people are taking even the Weiser Family Association is doing this. My Conrad Weiser, they're adding the term junior because his father's name was Johann Conrad Weiser as well. That is inappropriate for us as genealogists to add junior and senior when there has been no instance in their lifetime where they use junior or senior.
Correct.
What about juniors and seniors where the senior dies? Do you have a tradition in your family where they now start calling the junior senior, the living senior, and the third generation by that same name gets the amended statement of junior?
No, in my family that worked because we had Bill Smith or William Smith many, many times over. So that would not have worked.
Wouldn't have worked. I've heard of junior or senior, junior, and the third for that third generation. Russ?
Yeah, I have a question have you seen any documents, especially at the birth end of a lifetime, where you found the term senior for a male?
Not on a birth. I have seen it on a death certificate of my stepfather.
So that's
right there.
Right there. That's all you need to say is that I have yet to find, and I have a number of generations. I already have initials after my name, and I have never found a document of birth, especially on the birth end of that, church records or otherwise, where my grandfather has senior after it, and I will not record it. I may have it as an alternate name because I found a record that somebody did use the senior, but it was not be the preferred name.
Wow. All right. Now, Marion brings up an interesting thing, that the Army called her great-grandfather James Sr. when the nephew James Jr. was in the same unit. So the fact that that association or that group tended to call one senior and one junior when they weren't father and son, keep those things in mind. Dave, you wanted to say something.
Well, I would also add, I saw it in the chat, but these chats are flipping so quick, I couldn't get back to it. I can't remember who said this, but it was a point I was going to bring up, that in the same town, junior and senior does not necessarily mean father and son. Junior is simply the older man by that name, and the junior is the younger man, so as not to confuse the two. So that can be a problem. And I've also seen, especially here in New England, women called like Susanna Jr. because their mom is Susanna. So it's not it's unusual, but it's not it's not common. But I've seen it many times where the mothers where the older one is not necessarily called senior, but the daughter would be called junior. Wow. Perhaps just while the mom was alive. I haven't had studied it that closely, but junior and senior does not mean father and son.
Okay, and a lot of beginning genealogists would look for the senior and say that's the daddy, and it may not be so. Okay, let's get your comment in, Randy.
Yeah, my second great grandfather was known as Isaac Seaver III for most of his life, and he wrote it that way with the Roman numeral 3. But his father and his grandfather were not named Isaac Seaver. He was the third person named Isaac Seaver in his town. There was an older Isaac Seaver who was probably a great granduncle, and there was an Isaac Seaver who was the brother of number 3's father, Benjamin. And after Benjamin died, Isaac II became Isaac III's stepfather. So
that's very confusing.
But they did that for the records so that the records were consistent. You could identify if someone dies in 1847 Isaac II would still be called Isaac II in 1850, that type of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so we got to be careful. It's part of our due diligent, reasonably exhaustive research. Yes, Russ.
June said the same thing differently, I think, than Randy did. I made that mistake when I started doing genealogy, thinking that junior and senior were related until I found out they were not.
Yeah, so. It's tricky. All right. Okay. So let's see what else is on the docket. Let's see. Let's talk about ancestry DNA. Did anyone on the panel or among our attendees receive the notification via email from Ancestry.com that their DNA sample, not the results of their test, but the actual spit, had been destroyed?
Not recently.
I did. I did on April 1st. And so, of course, my first thought was, well, okay, happy April Fool's Day.
That's a terrible April Fool's if it were. But apparently, according to our good friend Roberta Estes of DNA Explained, it was not a hoax. It was not a thing of April Fool's. One of the interesting things she's noticed is that those that she talked to had not requested that their DNA sample be destroyed. Many people weren't even aware that their DNA sample had been retained. And furthermore, many of these customers had not signed up for the Human Diversity Project or weren't aware that they had. That was part of the email. So here is what happened when people called Ancestry support. They didn't get the same answer. One was that it was an erroneous email. 2, that their sample had not been destroyed. 3, that Ancestry could not tell them which sample was being referenced for people who had multiple. In the early days, you could manage multiple samples. So, for all the people that are in your family that weren't genealogists, you had them tested, but you managed the kits for them. Can't do that anymore.
Can't.
And then the last answer, which was Ancestry will get back to you.
I believe you still can manage
I think
other
so.
people's.
Oh, well, you can't do it newly.
Yes, you can.
You can?
Yeah.
My son just got his at Christmas time, and I'm manager on it.
Do you log in with the same email address?
I can access his from my email, from my
It's all
my
on your
Ancestry.
account. You didn't create a separate account for him.
No.
No, we did. Yeah, my son
There
did.
is an account. There is an account for the person who took the test,
Right.
but they can assign a person
That's
as
different.
manager.
Yeah.
Yes, that's totally different than what I was referring to when we all did, when it wasn't assigned by that person. In the olden days.
Cindy Bray says you need permission from the person tested.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a different process. Anyway, apparently it is not, I want you to be able to have this link, and Cousin Russ has shared it with you, so that you understand that was not a hoax, and apparently tech support hasn't caught up with what was the deal. She just concludes that it was an erroneous email, but it really doesn't matter to me, because my DNA results are there. I have matches. I have transferred the results of that DNA testing to other websites to expand the possibility of finding ancestral matches. And that's my interaction with Ancestry DNA. I'm not looking for anything else. They did their job. They tested my spit, came up with certain results, and those results have been well used by me. Okay. I know, Cindy. I can read typos, even of capital versus not. Okay. Oh, Diana, I can't even. It's not a perfect world.
I did get my results this week.
Even though they said they couldn't process?
No, I've tried 4 different kits since then. The 4th one finally worked.
Oh, wow. Good.
But I finally have results.
All right. So can you see behind me, everybody? This is the cleanest you will ever see the floor in my office. But I wanted to show you those 2 buckets. That is the rest of the ephemera that I still need to, it is sorted through, to do 52 ancestors. I'm going to be doing this for years to come. 52 ancestors is where I take unless I'm doing NERC and appearing a lot live or trying to follow along with my chat room, I do a recording every week and a little book going with the artifact in question. So in the top box, I found my father's stethoscope. There were some things that we packed up when we packed up our dad's house that I just couldn't open, and I finally opened them. He died in 2007, and I'm actually saying this without sobbing, which my family will tell you I'm making progress. Doesn't mean I don't still miss my dad. But what are you doing? Are your things going to be staying in your buckets? Or are you going to get the word out to the people in your family? My non-genealogists in the family love that I send them text messages with that video. They're interacting with me in those text messages, they're asking me, even my daughters are asking me, not just my grandchildren. They're like, is that the time we went to Orcas Island and, I fell in the water between the boat and the dock? They're asking me those kind of questions. And I honestly think anytime we can get people to think about the fun things you did in the family, we're going to have I can't tell because she hasn't announced it. We're going to have a big event in our family coming up. I want to show you part of my office as well. There's this steamer trunk, the door, a lot of Hollinger boxes. I have another shelf with a bunch of them, and the closet has 4 shelves of Hollinger boxes. So gradually, things are either going to be in the old steamer trunk or in the Hollinger boxes. Wherever I can, I've scanned them. What am I doing with my video? That's all right. When I pass away, and I'm assuming I'll outlive Mr. Myrt, because I work him so hard when family comes over. He worked another 2 hours cleaning up stuff from the yard, even though the family did a pretty good job yesterday. I'm sorry about seasickness. They're going to want to clean up this room and get rid of all this stuff. Unless I've taken the care to document and get these things situated. They're on YouTube. They're in my blog. Our blogs and our YouTube videos are going to outlive us. I like Randy's idea even better, where he puts memories up in Family Search, because he believes that arguably Family Search will probably outlive these other resources that we're talking about. I mean, Google's pretty big, but so was Yahoo in its day. And now Yahoo is pretty much, we don't even have Yahoo groups. Yeah, so I'm not expecting them to quibble over who gets the stethoscope, but I want them to know whose stethoscope it is before they donate it to, Doctors Without Borders or whatever. Yeah, everything is going to my youngest son. The oldest said everything else was going to the dump. I love it. Let's see, pack rat. Well, I hear you. There's a bit of that too. Anyway, it's just about our time, Cousin Russ, don't you think? Is there anything desperately necessary to speak about before we go?
I think we got everything.
Can I ask? Right. Can I ask one? I want to ask.
Yeah. You're locking up. He froze. I think you could ask, but apparently the internet. All right, try it again.
And then somebody challenged me.
Right, Dave, you had left us or froze for a while, but now you're still not back.
There we go. I'm sorry, I'm back. It's in the Zoom. It says Zoom quit unexpectedly. Anyway.
It's Zoom then, not me, that caused me to leave earlier.
British, he left.
You're still breaking up. You're still breaking up. Type it. All right, Cousin Russ, can you give them the link to Dear Myrtle's calendar? This afternoon, I'm going to be pretty busy finishing my handout because I'm going to be giving a presentation next week called Time Machine. And the last time I gave this was when I look at the resources I referred to in the Time Machine in the early 2000s, it's changed a lot. The internet has changed a lot. Dave, are you back with us permanently?
Yes.
Okay.
You're stuck with me. Anyway, they were telling me that that Chapin was not an immigrant because he left England and came to a British owned area, Massachusetts Bay Colony. And I thought for a minute, and I said, I've never really been challenged on that. And I mean, I just said thank you for the I just said thank you. I mean, I wasn't going to get nasty with the guy, but he insisted that my 8th grade grandfather was not an immigrant, because, and that would have to apply to the Puritans as well, to the Mayflower pastures. They were not immigrants because they left England. Well, they left Holland and went to England and then came here, but they were not immigrants because they didn't go from one country to another.
So what about that's
So
very,
everybody till 1776 was not an immigrant?
That's what he's implying.
I think
and
the natives would beg to differ.
Yeah, they
Well,
would. And I just thought it was an interesting perspective. I never considered it. I just wanted to hear an opinion, but we don't have time, so
What, Randy, make your comment for the recording, sir?
yeah.
Yeah, sure. So he migrated from one British entity to another, but in 1620, it wasn't yet a colony. It was being explored, but it wasn't yet a colony. Or
Right.
1630 for the Puritans. So,
right,
so they were immigrants to the people who were already here.
correct.
Yes.
That's the way I look at it. And Sam Chapin showed up in 1639 to Massachusetts Bay Colony, but yet I still consider him an immigrant.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think too, you need to I think that person is, when you're in the field of genealogy, there's certain accepted definitions of that. And so who were the indigenous people and what was the governmental jurisdiction? And the governmental jurisdiction comes into play as to where do we find records that may mention an ancestor, whether he's an immigrant or a migrating person. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you can look at it this way. I live in Wales now. I was born in England, but I would not class myself as an immigrant because England and Wales still come under all the same jurisdictions and things, and they're pretty much, well, they're classed the same sort of thing. And even if I moved probably to Scotland, I'd probably say the same thing because it's all part of the United Things. But if I went to Ireland, I could possibly be Southern Ireland. I could possibly be classed as an immigrant there because it comes under a different jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's interesting. Did not the Puritans leave for religious freedom?
Indeed. They were trying to purify the Church of England. They were not successful, so they got out of town.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, migrate means moved.
Yep.
Um,
and if I could clarify, the Puritans, the Mayflower pastures were not Puritans.
right.
They were separatists. I just wanted to throw that out. And they weren't all coming for religious reasons, but
Yeah.
I just
Well,
wanted to throw
yeah,
that in.
because didn't they have another subgroup that were where they weren't venturers, but they were more commercially oriented.
Adventurers.
Adventurers, yeah.
Yep.
Plus, they had
Yeah.
some hires.
They did.
And they had
George
indentured
Stoll was a
servants.
tinker, right.
Yep. They had indentured servants and all that other stuff. But that's a whole other discussion we're running.
Yeah.
and we're we're ready to go. We really are. All right.
Well, thank you
we've-
for the discussion, at least.
Okay. So something's happening with Zoom because I know you have very high speed internet. You have a gigabyte download. And
Well-
you locked up a couple of times.
Well, for
here, so-
several minutes, I didn't see anything from your screen. I had just a little tiny bit of a screen in the upper left-hand corner. And I didn't say anything. I just,
All
well,
right.
until
Well,
I
let's
started
hope-
getting,
Let's hope when you and I get to talk this evening that our Zoom works, okay?
yes, yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Great,
Hey guys,
thank you.
I really appreciate everyone being here today and for the grand and great time we have had discussing our favorite topic, family history. Nothing left to say, but I'm Dear Myrtle, your friend in genealogy. Happy family tree climbing, everybody. That's a wrap. Excellent. Wow. What a weird day it is. I have been doing my speed test on and off through this. I've been as low as 27 and as high as 60 something megabytes per second download. And I pay for 300. So, did you get a new headset too, Pat?
Yeah, well, this is one I've had for a while. It has a different connection, and I've used it like on my phone and my iPad.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have I don't have a plug-in for my old set.
Yeah.
I
So
just thought you were wearing your halo differently.
Yeah, because it matches. It
Yeah.
really does.
Yeah,
it's my rose gold headset.
All right.
color coordinated.
One of the hardest things about doing Mondays with Myrt is I can't get to every topic we think we're going to be talking about. And I so appreciate each one of you panelists being here because your input is so important. I think you're examples to people in the genealogy vertical of how to do things. And particularly this morning, we were talking about what backup services, etc. And the fact that your hard drive or your computer just was dying after 9 years, that's pretty long time. That just dovetail. I mean, how we dovetail these things is just a miracle that I happened to call on you last. And Robin, why I couldn't remember, you'd already told me, I don't know. It's just the way life goes sometimes. Thank you for bearing with old Myrt here. And get going on your artifacts, guys. Sharing those artifacts.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, bye, everybody.